Okay, so just kind of quick review, guys, on yesterday. Federalism, right? Sharing division of power between national, state, and local governments. I railed pretty hard yesterday on just the massive amount of increase of federal aid to the states. And remember, federal aid, which is dollars, originate in the states. They're sent to Washington, D.C., okay? Then the national government sends it back to the states as a carrot, or I used the analogy yesterday, crack, getting the states addicted to the money, and then they start to direct where the federal government wants to spend the money. Okay, so the federal government is now choosing where our tax dollars are being spent in the states and local communities. That makes sense. Creating more of a unitary system of government. Okay, so traditionally, this cooperation between the different levels of government has been a positive one. Now it's starting to become one that maybe isn't so positive, but creating a sense of dependency for states. And guys, you know, when you grow up, do you want to be dependent on somebody else for your subsistence? Now, guys, you might want to marry a sugar mama and, you know, have her like take care of you and that sort of thing. Okay. But then you kind of lose your freedom to kind of do what you want because you're dependent on somebody else. Ladies, same thing. Find your sugar daddy and, you know, then he has all the money and he can control what you can and can't do. You don't have that independence because you're dependent on somebody else. So states, when they want to solve problems that are local, their hands are tied because they're dependent on the federal government to tell them what to do with their own money. Does that make sense? Okay. So we talked about categorical grants yesterday. These are very specific in nature. Okay, states tend not to like these very much. I mean, of course, states like when they get money from the federal government. Who doesn't like when they get money from somebody else, right? I mean, it's, hey, yeah, thanks, okay? So remember, it started with revenue sharing, which had no strings attached. You could spend the money on whatever you wanted, okay? And then we moved to the grant system. So you have categorical grants, and then you have block grants, okay? So this is kind of the next thing. Now, states prefer these because they're broad, okay? So think block, broadly defined area, okay? So instead of airports, transportation or public transportation, which you could use for airports, you could use for city buses, you could use for rail, you could use for roads, bridges. It could be a whole bunch of different things. Okay, so if the federal government sends a bunch of money for public transportation, spend it where you need it in your state, not just on airports. That makes sense. Does that make sense? That's pretty easy, right? Health, welfare, health, and education. Well, that's broad. That could be a lot of different things. Okay, so states do like these. Okay. Now, again, I just want to point out the fact that this money is money we don't have. We're running deficits, printing money, okay? And now the states are dependent on this money, so the government feels compelled to print it. Because if you took away that, which is about 34% now, of what states get on average to do their business from the federal government, about 34%. You take that away, then states can no longer run their governments. So they're subservient, they're addicted, they're dependent, okay? Now, guys, these grants, there's a whole, like, industry of people that know how to write government grants and ask for government grants. Okay, if you work in a hospital or you work at a university, say KU Med, okay? By the way, I was on Facebook this week, and I saw at least 8 Bishop Carroll students that had what's called match day. Any guys familiar with this match day? So you do undergraduate work, and then you apply to med school, okay? And then the med school matches you with what it thinks the type of medicine you should do. At the University of Missouri, KU Med, UCLA, I had like 8 former students that got matched. One guy got matched to do, what do you call it? General surgery. Another guy got neurosurgery. Okay. One person got pediatrics. One got family medicine. Okay. So like from that year, people who just finished their undergrad, 8 Carroll grads are going to be doctors or surgeons. Just freaking cool. Okay. But anyhow, if you work, at KU Med, you need money. So you have people at KU Med that fill out grants to get, requests from the federal government to get money to help fund things like research. Okay. Now, sometimes this research is vital. Research on cancer, research on all different kinds of things. Okay. And sometimes it's research on stupid things. Like a grant for $150,000 to fund, to research the mating habits of the Japanese quail. What the hell is that? That's wasteful spending. Okay, government is printing this money, sending it to a school so they can study the mating habits of Japanese quail. I don't know what you're going to get out of that. But it's $150,000 of our tax dollars. Okay. So when we look at pros and cons here, obviously the pros with the block grants are flexibility. The cons of categorical grants is the restrictions. Okay. So let's kind of continue into this a little bit more. I have more charts and graphs. Okay. So this first one here starts in 1961, or actually 1981. Okay. So you see pretty level through here the Reagan years. Okay. You get into the Clinton years and you see the funding to states for housing and urban development, education, transportation, agriculture. I don't know if you guys know this, but every 10 years, Congress passes what's called the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill goes to subsidize farmers to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. Okay. The Department of Agriculture has a massive budget. So when we talk about the free and reduced lunches at school here, or just the free lunches, that is carried out by the Department of Agriculture. Things like food stamps, okay, that is carried out by the Department of Agriculture. Okay, and then the Farm Bill, which helps pay farmers to plant certain crops or not to plant crops. You guys remember this from the New Deal, where they paid farmers not to plant to bring down surpluses of food so prices would go up. We still do that. Okay. So the federal involvement here is growing, as you can see. This ends in 2007. Okay. Health and Human Services, obviously, you can see massive growth there. Okay, so this is non-health programs, and then red is health programs. So look at this, 1941, non-health programs, you had, looks like, under 10 billion, yes? Then you get into the 50s, it starts to go up a little bit, the 60s more. Now right here, what was created in 1964? What one? 1964. Say Medicare. What is Medicare? Insurance for who? When you retire? When you get old? For old people? Now, you just turned 65 and you qualify for Medicare. Is it depend? Are there any like you either qualify or you don't, or does everybody qualify? Because we're all paying into it. Any guys that have had a job are paying into Medicare right now. I've been paying it ever since I started working. My dad paid into Medicare. When it started in 1964, he was working. He was a pilot. He was paying in. He paid in it for its complete existence. And then when he got old, he wanted to use Medicare, but didn't qualify for Medicare because he made too much money. He had too many assets. Now, this is one of the things you got to think about, guys. What you do, so like when John Barber turns 65, okay, he's going to be able to buy into Medicare. He's been paying for it all these years. Now, if you're poor, you get Medicare. If you're not poor, you have to buy into the system. Now, it's cheaper than regular health insurance because the government subsidizes it. Okay, that's why people generally wait till they're 65 to retire, so they can buy into Medicare. Okay, because it's a lot cheaper than buying private health insurance. Okay, so my wife and I looked at this. We said, okay, what if we want to retire before 65? How much would it cost to get health care coverage for the two of us, private insurance, buying it on our own? Now, Stucky, your dad owns his own business, so he has to do this. He buys his own health insurance, okay? Kinsey, your dad buys his own health insurance. So about this was a couple of years ago, $27,000 a year to buy private health insurance, good coverage. Okay, Medicare's not even close to that. Medicare is more like $10,000 that you have to buy in. Does that make sense? Okay, so Medicare is really health care for the elderly that are poor and those that can buy in. Okay, and you can buy in and get more stuff. So like there's Medicare Part B, Medicare Part C, Medicare Part D, which is prescription drugs. Okay, so you pay in a little bit more to Medicare and you get prescription drug coverage. Okay, the largest health insurer in the United States is Medicare, is the U.S. government, the largest provider. So those of you that are thinking about going into medicine and becoming doctors or working in the healthcare field, the largest insurer is the government. Now, Medicaid, guys, is health insurance for the poor under 65. Okay, so like if your parents don't make hardly any money or they're unemployed, okay, then the children qualify for Medicaid. Does that make sense? So this is something we do as a society is we pool in this money, and that is funded by both the state of Kansas, Medicaid is, and the federal government. It's combined, pay for Medicaid, okay? So you've got to be under a certain threshold to qualify for that. Same thing with Medicare when you get older. Your income has to be below a certain level. Your assets, okay? So when my dad got sick, he had a rare disease called progressive supranuclear palsy. He's about 69 years old when he started having the symptoms of that. By the age of 71, we had to put him in a full-time nursing facility. We could not take care of him. Okay. And Do you know how much a nursing home, like not assisted living, a nursing home with 24-hour care costs per month? Any idea? It's about $5,000 a month. Okay. So that's, close to $60,000 a year. Now, generally people that go into these nursing homes like this don't live, more than a year. Like they're going downhill. Yes. Okay. But $5,000 a month over a 6-month period, guys, that's $30,000. Okay. We went to Medicare when my dad went in the nursing home and said, hey, does my dad qualify for some help here for the nursing home costs? And they said, no, he has too many assets. You need to sell the house and use that money. Okay. Even though he's been paying on it, paying into the system since 1964, he didn't qualify. Well, what the hell good is that? So you got to work the system. So if you can get him admitted to the hospital, like something's not right, let's get him into the hospital, and they put him back in the nursing home, Medicare picks up the next 100 days. So we did that twice. Said, hey, we got to get dad back into the hospital. Something's not right. Listen, he paid for it. Shouldn't he get it? It pissed me off. Okay? But this system, guys, you know what this is right here? When this goes straight north by about $100 billion, Obamacare. Okay? So what Obamacare did was it expanded Medicaid, which is health care for the poor. Not the elderly, just the poor, okay? I mean, you already got it. If you're old and poor, you already got Medicare. You're good, okay? The problem is, guys, doctors don't like to take Medicare patients and Medicaid patients. Why? The government doesn't pay as much as the insurance company pays for the services that you provide as a doctor or a hospital. Because they're the largest insurer in the country, they control what they pay. You understand? So if you're a doctor, you get a Medicare patient, and the bill is, $1,000, and Medicare sends you $600, what are you going to do? Sue them? You don't have a choice here. I mean, you just take the money. My buddy, none of you guys are in my business law class, are you? Okay. I had my buddy, Derek, come in the other day to my business law class, and he runs a home health care company. Okay. So he's got about 10 nurses, and they go out and they make visits at home for people. And a lot of these people are Medicare patients. So when he bills Medicare, for $100 for a visit, for a $200 visit, he gets like, for a $200 visit, he's getting like $60. Okay. So doctors really they want people with insurance because they pay more. Some doctors won't even see Medicare patients. We don't accept Medicare. Okay. So it's interesting. I mean, you're losing in a big pool of patients, but hell, we got 340 million people. So there's no lack of, sick people or people that need to see the doctor. Okay. So this has been a massive expansion of government spending here. Okay. This is that revenue sharing we talked about in the 70s. Okay. That Jimmy Carter did. Okay. And then Reagan comes in and it levels off. And then since then, it's just kept going up and up and up and up. Okay. This is the chart that I really want you to, but this is kind of the shocking part. Okay. So say this is an average of all 50 states. Now for Kansas, how does Kansas get its revenue for roads and education? Biggest one is income tax, state income tax, yes? Any guys ever gotten a fishing license? Okay, hunting license? Okay. You ever visit a state park and have to pay a fee to get into the state park? Oh, y'all have tags on your car. So, you know, when you go to the tag office, you got to pay for your tags based on the value of your vehicle. So this is other funds that states get, other revenue that they get through licenses and fees and stuff like that. Then states tax their people's incomes. Okay. And then this red one here, guys, is the money they're getting from the federal government. Okay. So this is 2005 to 2010. This certainly shoots up with Obamacare. Okay. So what Obamacare did, guys, was it expanded Medicaid for the poor. Okay. So it lowered the threshold, or actually raised the threshold for you to qualify to get health insurance through the government. So let's say you have a family of four that makes $40,000 a year. Okay, it's tough. That's a tough living right there. Family of four on 40,000. That's tough. So there, you're probably going to qualify for some government aid when it comes to health care. Does that make sense? Okay. If you're making $75,000 for a family of four, you may not qualify. Guys, $75,000 for a family of four is pretty hard as well today, especially with inflation. This is why we have so many families that have two-parent working households. Yes? So you combine those incomes. Okay, and then hopefully you get towards, you know, closer to $100,000 per family, and then you know, maybe you have some discretionary income, you can take a vacation, these sorts of things. If you got a family of four and you're making under 75, it's tough to stretch that. You understand? Okay, this is why you guys, you want to go, you know, find a profession that you guys can make a decent living at. Okay. This is why it's very stressful on single family, you know, single parent families, because you've only got one income. Okay. And so this is where the government steps in and tries to help. Okay. But right now, states are receiving about 34% of all the money they spend from the federal government. When it used to be less than 5%. Okay, and most people don't even know this is happening. So by virtue of controlling so much of the money that states have, the federal government has more control on state and local governments. Okay, it's an issue of freedom, and the states are losing their freedom. Okay. Just another graph here. This is healthcare in the red. Okay, natural resources and environment here. Education, training, employment, social services. Purple is transportation. Community, regional development. Yellow, natural resources. Wait, yellow's natural resources. This is income security, this one here. So that's like food stamps, welfare programs, and so forth. Okay, and the last one is energy thing. Yeah, energy here. Okay, so you guys know if you are struggling to pay your bills and your heating bill, you know, is really high in the wintertime and you can't afford, you know, they're going to shut off your power, shut off your heat. You can go to the government and get assistance to pay for those bills, or your heating your home, your energy bills. Okay. There are programs out there for people. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about are federal mandates. Okay. So the word mandate is pretty simple. It's a directive. It's an order. Okay, so I mandate that this next assignment, if you have a C or lower in this class, this next assignment is not optional. That's an eBright mandate for U.S. government class. Okay, how's that? That's a mandate. It's something I'm going to impose on you. All right, so there's 3 different types of federal mandates. Now, some of these make real good sense. Okay. Laws directing states to take action on an issue. Like asbestos. You guys know what asbestos is? There's a reason we have tiles over our heads here. Because above those tiles, not today, because this is a new building. And we built this 12 years ago, right? But over in that part of the building, they used to have asbestos in the ceiling. And that is insulation. Buildings all across this country in the 1960s and 70s were built using asbestos as insulation. So the ceiling in the cave, the ceiling in the commons had a coating of asbestos on it. And then in the 80s, they figured out that if you breathe in asbestos particles, it causes cancer, especially in young developing lungs like school children. And most of the schools that were built in this country had asbestos in them. So, 1986, they told states, in your schools, in your buildings, you have to get rid of this asbestos or protect your students from it. Hence the tiles. Okay? Now, when we did this HVAC product, this, the buildings, the HVAC, the heating and air conditioning for this building, you guys know how much that cost to do this? $5.1 million. Now, does it cost $5.1 billion to buy the big heating and cooling units? No. That's less than half of the cost. The majority of the cost is removing the asbestos. Here's the deal, guys. When you make an improvement to an existing structure that has asbestos in it, you have to get rid of the asbestos. If the HVAC system continued to work fine, that was 50 years old, okay, then we wouldn't have to remove all the asbestos. Now, I remember in the last decade, during spring break or during the summer, they would cordon off part of the building and say nobody goes into this part of the building because they're removing asbestos. Okay, so they were taking little parts of buildings where people were exposed and getting rid of it. Okay, like in the cave and in the commons. Okay, because if you throw something up into the cave like a volleyball and hit the ceiling, particles fall, and people breathe those in. It causes cancer. Okay, so they had to get rid of that stuff in places where there was, a possibility that happened. But now that we're doing the HVAC system, we had to get rid of all of it. Okay. We've raised I think 3.1 million of the 5.1 million for the HVAC. Okay. It's hard to raise money for that. You know what I mean? You want to build a new indoor athletic facility for all of our sports teams? That's easy money to raise. You want to raise money for a new auditorium? That's a little harder to raise. Yes? Okay. That's next on the list. after we pay for the HVAC, we'll ask for a capital fund to build a new auditorium. I don't know if you guys know that. I know you guys perform there. Okay. Did you know that? Okay. I think they want to raise about $12 million to build a new auditorium. We've got to get approval from the diocese to do a capital campaign to do that. And you can't have too many capital campaigns going on in the diocese at the same time. Like they just did a bunch of work at what, St. Anne's, correct? Is that right? St. Anne's? They just like built a new something over there, right? It was the cathedral before that. Remember they redid the cathedral? Did a bunch. Okay. And when we did the AC here 12 years ago, and then Capon built their gym too, those were big capital campaigns. Okay. So I know they want to do an auditorium. They're talking about, you know, they would just basically get rid of the whole 600 area where all those classrooms are over there. You guys have classes over there. You got that old carpet. It's dingy. Those of you guys that are in band or choir, those rooms down there are nasty, right? I mean, we would just tear all that out and build a whole new wing with an auditorium. Okay, so when you guys get those good jobs in a few years, okay, and they call you or send you a letter asking for money, okay, listen, I'm just going to be frank with you. Probably sharing information I shouldn't share. The advancement office down there, you know the advancement office? Mrs. Nielsen, her job is to raise money. Do you know how much money she's supposed to raise each year? $650,000. Okay? That's just donations to the school for the annual fund. Okay? Now, the first $200,000 of that goes to our feeder schools, the ones that are poor. That's called the Drexel Fund. Yes? So that leaves $450,000. Okay? That goes to pay the teachers. That goes to do the budgets for the athletic budgets, the arts department budgets, all that. Okay? It's a tight budget here. They've raised this year almost $500,000 on the annual fund. And that is a little over 700 donors. Okay? 700 donors. Now, this school is 50 years old. Now, if you graduated 50 years ago, you're 68 years old, yes? Okay. 50 years. Now, the school didn't always used to be as big as it is now, right? So graduating classes were not always 250 plus, yes? So let's just take an average of 200 students that graduated from Bishop Carroll over 50 years. 50 times 200 is 10,000 graduates of Bishop Carroll in the last 50 years. Okay? 700 people have given to the annual fund. That's it. Okay? I give to the annual fund. Okay? So they pay me and then I give them the money back. Okay? So just think about that, guys. Okay? I know some of your experience here at Bishop Carroll has been wonderful. Some of yours have maybe not been as wonderful. Okay? But, you know, some of your parents went to school here. Some of your parents went to school here. Okay? And maybe you'll send your kids here. We want it to be nice here, right? Public schools have tons of money. Don't pretend, don't feel sorry for the public schools when it comes to funding. Okay, don't feel sorry for them. They have way more money Okay. So people that can afford it, that graduate from here, should help. Okay? Because we want nice things for you guys. You know what I mean? All right. So, asbestos. Let's get rid of that. It's expensive. Okay? Because you got guys in hazmat suits. That's expensive. Okay? Now, what about clean air? Guys, if you lived in the 1970s, I tell you what, pollution in this country was pretty bad. Like, you could be outside of Los Angeles, looking down on the city, and just see a haze of smog sitting on the city of Los Angeles. New York, smog. Okay? So in the 1970s, they passed the Federal Clean Air Act. Okay? States were given money to reach certain goals, to reduce pollution. Okay? If they complied and met those goals, there was no federal involvement. The federal government didn't come in and put restrictions on you. You meet those goals, you're good. So that's a choice. If you don't meet those goals, then the federal government's going to come in and enforce its rules so that you have cleaner air. And I got to tell you guys, this country has done an amazing job at reducing pollution. Okay? In the last 20 years, especially, okay, the air we breathe is much cleaner than it used to be. Okay. Now, we still have some times in the summer when it's hot and dry, and you get a lot of dust in Kansas, yes? And they will actually give you warnings, you know, that, hey, the air today is not safe to breathe. In the summertime, you'll notice gas prices go up. Because under federal law, you have to burn cleaner fuel in the summertime. Okay? There's certain things you can do, guys, to help the environment that don't take a lot of effort. Okay? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not like this tree hugger person, okay? I drive a V8. I consume energy. I set my thermostat where I want to set my thermostat. If I'm cold, I turn it up. If I'm hot, I turn it down to wherever I want. Okay? In the summertime, you should mow grass in the morning before it's hot, or in the evening as it cools down. Morning's probably best to mow your grass. Okay? Because when it's hot, that air pollution gets worse. Fill up your gas tank in the morning or in the evening after the sun goes down. Okay? You fill up your gas tank during the heat of the day, it's worse for the environment. Okay? In California, they burn that clean fuel year round. That's why gas prices are so high. One of the reasons gas prices are so high in California. That state has chosen to do stricter environmental policies, okay? But there are federal guidelines. One more I want to talk about. How much time we got? Like 5 minutes? Or, yeah, 5 minutes? Okay. In 1990, federal government passed what's called the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Okay, George W. Herbert Walker Bush signed this into law. So you know the family stadium out here, right? When you go into the stands, is there a wheelchair access into the stands out here? No. Now, a few years ago, the press boxes at the top of the stadium on both sides, they were dangerously horrible. Like the floors were rotting out. So they replaced those two press boxes at the top. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Now, I'm really surprised. If you make an improvement, like I said, like with the HVAC, we're making an improvement. We have to get rid of all the asbestos. If you make an improvement to your facilities, you have to make it ADA compliant, which I'm surprised we do not have an elevator to those press boxes. Okay? If we make improvement to the stands, like tear them down and build new ones, or go bigger to accommodate more fans, we would have to make them ADA compliant. And that goes across the country with every building in the country. If you make an improvement to it, you've got to make it ADA compliant. Okay? It's expensive. And they don't give you money to do it. When they don't give you money to do it, that's called an unfunded mandate. Is the federal government giving us money to remove the asbestos? No. We're having to raise that ourselves. Okay? So that's an unfunded mandate. Okay? Now, the last one here. So when we built a deck on the base behind the baseball field, so players can sit up there and watch, we put a ramp in. We did that about 8 years ago, and went ahead and built a ramp. So we're ADA compliant. Okay. Okay. Strings attached. In 1986, when Mr. Ebright was 17 years old, the federal government said to the states, hey, if you want money for transportation, we're going to send you billions of dollars for transportation. You need to change your drinking age to 21. So the drinking age, guys, is not a federal law. The drinking age in each state is a state law where the federal government used blackmail, transportation funding that originated in the states. Remember, that money comes from the states, goes to the federal government, and they say, hey, if you want this money for transportation back, you'll change your drinking age. My sister was 19. I was 17. My sister was grandfathered. So she was already legal to drink at 19. I wasn't at 17. So I had to wait until I was 21 to legally drink. She was grandfathered, so the people that were already 18 were allowed to keep drinking. That makes sense. Okay. Now, this took a couple years because Louisiana said, we're not doing that. We want young people, 18, 19, 20, to come into our state, go to, New Orleans, go down to Bourbon Street, and spend a bunch of money on Fat Tuesday and New Year's Eve and so forth, and we'll get more revenue from tourism coming in of young people than we will get from you sending us money for roads. That only lasted 2 years, and the roads in Louisiana still suck. Okay. So by 1988, then it all changed. Tobacco, guys, that's a federal law. Okay, and I don't remember them debating this. I just woke up one day and I heard they changed the age to buy tobacco to 21. I don't remember them talking about it. They just did it. Okay, which created a whole bunch of 19-year-olds that were using tobacco. Today it was legal. Tomorrow it's not. And if you continue to do that, now you are breaking the law. So you created a bunch of criminals. Like Prohibition did. Yes? So, okay. Good for today? I got more.